May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. One of the great privileges that I have in my work is to walk with families as they go through the death of a loved one and to celebrate funerals with them. And I had a few over the last couple of weeks. And as we were leading up to Lent in the church year, I couldn't help but thinking about, as I was preparing to speak some words of hope into those situations, I couldn't help thinking about Ash Wednesday, this strange service that Anglicans begin the season of Lent with, where we're marked with the sign of a cross on our foreheads in ashes, and we're reminded that we come from the dust and we return to the dust. And I was sharing with some of these families at funerals that we do this weird thing where we remind ourselves of our mortality with ashes on our foreheads. And at one of the receptions after, a young person came up to me and said, "Thank you for saying that that's weird. Thank you for acknowledging your weirdness." Well, Ash Wednesday is really one of my favorite services of the Christian year. It starts us on this season into Lent, reminds us of our mortality. I don't know if you've seen this making the rounds on the internet, but there's this great image of the actor Mark Wahlberg with his ashes on his forehead giving an interview, and the caption at the bottom says, "Mark Wahlberg's 40-day challenge." So, welcome to Lent. Welcome to Mark Wahlberg's 40-day challenge. During this season of Lent, as we prepare to celebrate the resurrection of Christ at Easter, we come with a certain intention. It's a rich season because we have this intentional focus on growing deeper in our love of God and in our love of neighbor. And there are practices that have traditionally supported us in this work. Fasting, prayer, almsgiving. These are wonderful things. In light of our reading this morning, which is all about forgiveness, I'll throw one more practice out there that we might take as our Lenten 40-day challenge. To forgive. To make forgiveness a practice. Forgiveness is a tricky thing. When I was in seminary, one of our professors who taught pastoral care was a psychologist. She taught a course on forgiveness. And the first thing she taught in that class was that forgiveness is complicated. Because you can say to someone, "I forgive you," and they can respond all kinds of different ways. "Do you mean you forgive me? I haven't done anything that needs forgiving." Forgiveness is a complicated thing. When we take it onto a sort of bigger scale, and we think about some societal issues, sometimes people who are comfortable in the status quo can use the call to forgive as a way to subdue people who might push back against the status quo. So if you think about someone who's in a situation of having been oppressed, whether that's over race or over gender or sexuality, and they want to push back against the system, there might be some comfortable people who say, "Well, it's fine, the system's not great, but really, you need to forgive these people. You need to go about making this change the right way, so you need to be forgiving." And so sometimes we can sort of lose the edge and the charge of the call to justice, because we just need to be nice and get along and forgive everyone. Because forgiveness also is not about saying, "It's okay, it's all right, everything's okay, I'm fine, you're fine, let's just move on." Right? Forgiveness is complicated. And so when Jesus says, "Forgive," and Peter says, "Well, how many times should I forgive? Should I forgive 7 times? Jesus says, not 7 times, but 77 times. Or it could also be translated 70 times 7 times. There's a lot of sevens for you Bible number geeks. 7 is, the number of perfection. When you get a whole bunch of 7s, that's a whole lot of perfection. So basically, Jesus is saying, forgive infinitely. Forgive infinitely. There's no end. You never come to the end of needing to forgive. But he doesn't just say that. Thank God he doesn't just say that. He also says those things that our reading began with. He gives us a process for what forgiveness can look like. And it is not just a feeling, I feel like I've forgiven, or I've brushed it under the rug or pushed it away. Jesus gives us a process to work through so that we can actually get to forgiveness that works and that sticks. So Jesus says, when a member of a church sins against you, now isn't that interesting? When a member of the church sins against you, Jesus is under no delusion here. He knows when you get a group of people together, there might be some offense given and offense taken, even in a church. He says, when this happens, here's the plan. Go talk to that person one-on-one. See if you can work it out together. If you can't, then bring in another person or two to witness the situation. And maybe with some extra outside eyes, you can figure it out. If that doesn't work, bring it to the whole church. Wouldn't it be fun if we did this? In the old prayer book, there's a rubric that says, if the priest, while giving communion, knows of anyone coming to the rail who has not been reconciled to someone else, they can withhold communion until they sort it out. I haven't done it. I heard nervousness in that after. It's Lent, I'm watching. Bring it to the church. If you still can't work it out, then let that person be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Okay, there's a lot going on in this little three-step process that Jesus lays out. So let's unpack some of what's going on here. So Jesus starts by saying, if someone has sinned against you, go talk to them one-on-one. That is a really good place to start, isn't it? We all know what it's like to be ganged up on, right? It puts us on the defensive right away. This is just actually good practical advice. If you want to get some resolution with someone, if you want some restoration of a relationship, you want reconciliation, don't build up a team first to come to the person and tell them what's wrong. I cringe every time I get together with family. Because there's only one thing worse than the teasing I get when my wife and my mother are together. It's the teasing I get when my wife and my mother and my sister are together. No one likes getting teamed up on. So we go to the person one-on-one and try and sort it out. Now, for those who were here a couple of weeks ago, we heard Jesus teaching on the wheat and the weeds. Remember the story? There's a farmer who goes into the field, scatters some good seed, it will grow some nice wheat, but in the night an enemy comes and plants some weeds, and they start to grow up together. And the farmhand said to the farmer, well, should we go and pluck out the weeds? And the farmer says, just leave them until harvest, we'll deal with it then. I don't want you going in, plucking them out and trampling over the weeds, so we'll just deal with it later. And the lesson for us there is that inside each one of us is that field that has both wheat and weeds, right? We are both a mix of the good and the bad, at the same time sinner and saint. In another one of Jesus' teachings, he said, if you see a speck in your neighbor's eye and you want to take it out, make sure you take out the log that's in your own eye first. Deal with your own stuff, and then you can help someone else deal with their stuff. It's good to keep that in the back of our mind before we go into this confrontation, right? We come with some humility, and we might even come with some openness and curiosity and say, okay, I felt like you hurt me in this way, but maybe there's something I brought to this as well. And so there's that humility. Coming with that humility is a really helpful starting place. But then, if that doesn't work, bring a couple of people along. And it's not like that gang up thing, right? But Jesus says, bring a couple of witnesses along. I think that this is maybe bringing some wise people who can help discern what's going on here. Because if you sat down and had that conversation, this is what I felt happened, and the other person is engaging, you're disagreeing on the facts. You thought that happened, but I think this happened, right? You can't agree with that, or you can't agree about how to move forward. Maybe bringing a couple of people in from the outside line and say, let's discern this together. What's really going on here? What's going on behind this? And that's helpful. But then, if that doesn't get us anywhere, we bring it to the church. And if it doesn't really work out there either, let that person be to you as a Gentile tax collector. In other words, excommunicate them, right? Well, that's where our minds went in Bible study on Thursday. We all started talking about excommunication as soon as we got to that part of the story. Right? We shun them, we cast them out. If they can't come around after 1 round, 2 round, 3 round, 3 strikes you're out, right? Okay, well, maybe not. What do we know about Gentiles and tax collectors in the Gospels? In Jesus' ministry, what's Jesus' stance towards these people? Well, this is the Gospel of Matthew. We think Matthew is a tax collector. Well, that's something that Jesus brought in and included. The Gentiles, right. For Jesus' contemporaries, there was a very strong us and them, right? We are the people of God. This is supposed to be our land, but the Romans are occupying us, the Gentiles. We don't want anything to do with them. They're unclean, we can't eat with them, all that sort of stuff. But at the beginning of Matthew's Gospel, it's Gentile astronomers who follow a star and are among the first to witness this revelation that God has come in human form in Jesus, right? At the end of Matthew's Gospel, Jesus' last words to his disciples, go to all the nations, go to the Gentiles, and make disciples of them. So Jesus is really about including Gentiles and tax collectors. So maybe it's not really actually about excommunication, shunning. Maybe these are people we still want to bring in. But in another place, Jesus is teaching about loving your enemy. And he says, you who are my followers are called to love your enemies. It's not enough just to love the people who will love you back. Even the Gentiles do that. So maybe the bar is set a little lower for Gentiles. It's certainly set lower for tax collectors. Maybe the bar is set a little lower. So maybe if you've gone through this process, you've talked to them one-on-one, you've brought in some friends, you've brought it before the church, and you're still not getting any resolution, maybe you just say, you know what? Maybe we're not going to get any further than this. Maybe you and I just aren't going to see eye to eye, and I kind of need to give up trying to make you see things the way I do. And maybe that's what love looks like in that situation. Once you've done the work to get there. Once you've done the work to get there. Not the starting point. But maybe we just say, okay, you're you, I'm me. We don't agree. That's okay. We'll move forward. And then Jesus says, forgive infinitely. But there's a bit of work to get there. There's a bit of a process. So this Lent, this 40-day challenge, maybe there's an invitation here to a practice of forgiveness, where we can identify who is someone that I feel like has wronged me, or maybe the other side, maybe who's someone that I feel like I've wronged, and we need some reconciliation. And maybe intentionally work through this process. Talk with them one-on-one. See if you can sort it out. See if you can get some resolution. And not just hope that time heals all wounds, not just hope that forgiveness will happen, but lead into the practice of forgiveness. So, have a holy Lent. Have a forgiving Lent. Lean into the challenge and find the gifts that come when we're really able to truly forgive. Because they're liberating gifts. When we forgive, we free the person that we need to forgive, and of course we free ourselves as well. Amen.